Hello and welcome back to the Let's Create series, and in today's video we are going to start the Xamarin Forms tutorial. So we're going to start creating a time tracker app, and we're going to do this cross-platform and it'll work on Android and iOS. I'm really looking forward to this one, so let's jump right into it. Let's get started by creating a new project in Visual Studio, and so go ahead and click Create New Project, and then you'll have this list here. And let's go ahead and type at the top Xamarin.Forms, and that'll give us pretty much the first option is mobile app with Xamarin Forms. Click that and select next. And then it's going to want a project name, and we can just name this time tracker. And I might name mine time tracker tutorial. And then you'll choose a location for your project, and I'll probably pick somewhere on the desktop. And I will just click select, and it's going to want a solution name. Time tracker tutorial for me is fine, and then I'll click create. When this window pops up, we'll select blank, and we'll make sure Android and iOS are selected, and we can click OK, and our project will be created. And once our project is created, we could see we have the shared project. If we minimize that or collapse it, we could see we've got the shared project. We can collapse the Android project and the iOS project, and we'll see we have 3 total in the entire solution. We have the shared, the Android, and the iOS. And we can re-expand the shared, and we could start setting up our project structure. So when I make my project structure, I really like to add a couple folders right off the bat. And so the first couple folders I like to add, we'll start with right-click the project, go to Add and New Folder. And we'll name this models. Then we'll right click the project again, go to add new folder, and this will be pages. And we'll do the same thing, and we'll add page models. And we'll do the same thing again, and we'll go ahead and add services. And that should be a good start for now. One of the things we'll add in page models is a base folder, because we're going to have some shared code that we'll put in a parent class. So this will be an abstract class. Let's go ahead and add a base folder. And in here we'll add page model base. So go ahead and add new item, and this will just be a class, and we'll call it page model base. Okay, when we add a new class, we'll notice that the class doesn't have the public access modifier, so we'll add that, public. And we want our page model base to extend bindable object. So let's go ahead and add bindable object behind that, and then we can just import the using for that, and that's using Xamarin Forms. And then we also want to make another class called Page Model Locator. So add new class, and that'll be Page Model Locator. And again, let's make that public. Then we can pull in Tiny IOC, which is this inversion of control that we'll use. So let's go ahead and open up Google, and we can just type Tiny IOC GitHub. And that'll bring us to the Tiny IOC GitHub repository. And what we're basically looking for is the Tiny IOC class. So you can click in there, we can just click raw, and we can copy all of it. And we'll make a new folder in the project level. So add new folder, and we'll name that Tiny IOC. And then we'll add a class in here. We'll name that class Tiny IOC as well. And in this class, we'll just replace everything with what we got from the GitHub repository. We'll save that and we'll close it. So the next thing we want to do is in our page model locator, we want to initialize our Tiny IOC container, which is our inversion of control container. We could add a class level member, and we can just say static Tiny IOC container, and then you can import that using, and we'll just call it container. And then we also want some kind of dictionary to map our pages to our page models. So we can say static dictionary, and that'll take 2 types. And we'll just call it view lookup. And now we can create our constructor. So we don't want our constructor to be public because we don't want anybody making an instance of the page model locator. We just want people using the page model locator as a static instance. So we can just say static page model locator. And in here we can start our initialization. So our container will just be simply equals new tiny IOC container, but our view model or our view lookup will be a simple dictionary with type. And then we can start registering our views and view models, or pages and page models, when they are needed to be registered. So we can just, for now, just put a placeholder comment and say register pages and page models. And then we'll make another comment a couple lines down, and we'll just say register services. And then we can just, for informational purposes, put services are registered as singletons by default. Okay, and that's good for now. We also need a way to do like a class level resolve method so that we can access those methods outside of the page model locator, and we don't have to rely on this container. So the first thing we'll do is create a resolve method. So we can say public static, because this class is mainly going to be operated in a static instance, and we're going to return just some kind of typed parameter, and we can say resolve, and then we want to say put that type parameter in there again, and we want to give some kind of constraint on there. So we'll say where t is a class, and we'll just return container dot resolve t. And so what that'll do is take in any parameters that are put in, which are like normally dependencies, so some kind of interface, and if it's registered into that container, those will resolve, and then it will resolve the actual T class, which will probably be a page model, and it'll go from there. So that's great. And then we'll make this public method that anybody can access from the page model locator to create a page for a specific page model type. So we want this to be public, and it'll be static because our class is static, and it'll return some page. And so it looks like we'll have to import Xamarin Forms. And then we'll name this method create page for. And this will take in a type, and it'll be a page model type. So in here, we want to grab that page type from our lookup table, which we haven't actually registered anything yet, but we will. And so we can retrieve that by saying just var page type equals view lookup. And then in this view lookup dictionary, we want to provide a key, and then we'll just say that key is the page model type. So that'll give us the page type, and then we can use activator to create the page. So we'll say var page equals, and we'll cast it and say activator dot create instance, and we'll just give it the page type. And that'll go in and create the instance of the page for us and return the page. And then we want to resolve that actual page model. So we'll say var page model equals container, which is our IOC container, our inversion of control container, and we will resolve that page model type. Okay, and then from there we'll just set the page's binding context to the page model. Then from there we can go ahead and just return page. And so what we've done is found a page for a specific page model, we've set its binding context, and we've returned the page. So now we can use that anywhere. And so that's perfect there. So now we have our page model locator all set up. We have our page model base just getting ready, and then we can start making our page models. So page model base needs a couple things. So we have some shareable code that we want to put into our page model base. And so like every page is going to have at least two properties. And so one of them is going to be like a title, and another one is going to be is loading, which will detect network activity. So let's go ahead and add those properties. So we'll say, just string title, and then public string title. And the purpose of this is so we can kind of track changes. So we can say get title and set, and we can set title equals value, and we could say on property changed, and we can send name of title. And that's kind of one way to do it. Another way is to use an actual method that will handle all of basically these lines of code, and it'll put them into a one-liner. And so right now that doesn't seem too beneficial. But as we move on into our project, we'll see that that saves us kind of a lot of time. So let's go ahead and make a method so we can see what it will do for us moving forward. So let's go ahead and create that method. And we want this method to be usable by any of the children. So we'll at least make this protected, if not public. So protected, and this will return a bool to indicate whether or not this property actually changed. And we can just call it set property. So we need a typed parameter, and we'll reference some kind of T storage. And so that could be any typed parameter. We also want to provide some kind of T value. And this will be because we're setting that value to that storage. So they need to be the same type. And so we have that. And then we need to use something called, it's an attribute, and it's caller member name. And once we type that out, we can import the using from system.runtime.compiler services. And so we have caller member name, and that will be a string. And we'll say property name is fine, and we'll default that to null. And so now we have this set property method. And what we want to do is we want to check to see if the value of storage already equals this inputted value. And if it does, we're just going to return false and say we didn't set the property. But if they're not equal, we're going to set the value to the storage, and then we'll go ahead and return true. But between there, we're going to notify the binding context that the property changed. So we can do that with a simple if statement, and we'll use the equality comparer. We'll pass in that typed parameter, and we'll just use default, and then we'll just check to see if it's equals. And what we're checking is storage versus value. And so if those are equal, we'll just return false because we're not actually going to set anything. It doesn't need to be set because they're already equal. So otherwise, if that condition was not met, we did not return false, and now we're going to do something. So we're just going to set storage equals value. And then we'll go ahead and raise on property changed. And this will be the same thing, property name, which we passed in. And then we'll return true. And so what is the benefit of writing all that? Well, the benefit is if we do something like that is loading, so bool is loading, then we say public bool is loading, which we could bind to. We can do the same thing with get. We'll just return is loading. But on set, instead of those 4 lines of code, we can make it 1. We can say set property, and we could use ref is loading and value, and that's the end. And what that's going to do is take care of all of this in 1 line of code. And right now, that doesn't seem beneficial because that's, 10 lines of code. How is that beneficial to turn 4 into 1? Well, we're going to be using this a lot, and so this saves us a whole bunch of work moving forward. And that's what we're going to be doing this episode with the setup. Is we're going to be creating a lot of code, but it's going to save us even more code later on. And so that's the big focus of today's episode. It's a great way to set up every one of your Xamarin Forms projects. So the next thing we're going to want to do is let's go ahead and change this get title. Let's change the setter to a set property as well. So we'll say set, and that set property ref title, and we'll pass in value, and that'll take care of that. And so the next thing we're going to want to do is create a couple pages. And so we at least want a login page. Let's say add in the pages directory, add new item. And that'll be a content page. Make sure it's the one that's got the .xaml or XAML. And we will call this one login page. And that should give us two files. It should give us that login page.xaml, and it should give us login page.xaml.cs. And so that's fine. We can leave this the way it is right now. We can close it. So we have the login page, and let's do the same thing for dashboard page. So new item, content page, and we'll rename it dashboard page. And that'll give us those two files as well. And we can do the same thing, add new item, and we'll name this one summary page. And go ahead and create that. And then we'll add another one. So add new item, and this will be profile page. And then we'll go ahead and add new item, and we'll do the same thing again. And the next one over is settings page. And the last one we want is a way to keep time. So we'll go ahead and add new item, and this will be time clock page. All right, great. And now we need page models for each of these. So let's go ahead and add a new class to page models. And we'll call this one login page model. And so that'll create a .cs class for us. We're going to make it public. And then we're going to extend from page model base. And then we'll have to import the using. So using page models.base. And we're going to do the same thing for each of those other page models. All right, so that gives us all of our pages and all of our page models. So that's a great start. So we can close all of these tabs if we want. And I want to keep these episodes to anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes each. So this is where I'm going to end part 1 of the first episode. So we're going to break the first episode into 2 episodes. And so we'll finish setting up the project in the next episode. So if you liked what you saw today, go ahead and like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.